allowed to go out on the water. You know, doing stuff like that is great. And then also just in terms of athleticism, at Row New York, we don't turn away any participants because of their ERG scores. If they're interested in competing, we'll let them compete. You know, there's a certain amount of accountability that they have to the team, but their ERG scores alone will never keep them from being able to compete if that's something they're interested in. And then on the other side of that, you know, some people are just not interested in rowing at all. I mean, not interested in competing at all, and having opportunities for that as well. You know, recreational teams where you still get in a good workout, you still get to go out on the water. But, you know, if you don't want to compete, you certainly don't have to. You know, so these types of policies in rowing make it so much more accessible to such a huge group of people, right? Varying interests, varying priorities, varying abilities. And if there's anything else in particular that your programs are doing, I'd love to hear about it, maybe in the chat, or like we can at some point touch base later. Always interested to hear how programs are choosing to kind of break away some of these barriers to accessibility. And then, you know, once we get past accessibility, you know, once you have people actually at your boathouse, you know, you get them there, they see a flyer, they do a learn to row, you know, something happens and you get them to the boathouse, what happens next, right? Experience. I also think it won't be a completely new concept, but positive experiences is what leads to retention. So having a good experience at the boathouse is what's going to keep rowers coming back. And I think for a lot of successful para programs, you know, the experience is what's key, right? Like a new participant comes to the boathouse and, you know, anti-ableism, you know, visitors are appreciated and seen for who they are and what they can do. You know, no one's making assumptions about what they can and can't do. They're appreciated and celebrated for who they are when they walk into the space, and they show their interest in the sport. And then, you know, on top of that, you know, so they walk in feeling very welcome in this new space. And then when they're looking around, they see themselves in the rest of the community at the boathouse, right? In the rowers and the coaches, maybe even in the leadership. You know, other people who look like them, who have the same concerns as them, are around, you know, and that can be also very welcoming and offer a safer space for someone to feel comfortable trying something new. So again, I think these are really important things para programs do for inclusion, that make new people feel welcome and safe at the boathouse. But as Tara mentioned, even in these spaces, we can't ignore that para and adaptive programs are often afterthoughts at many boathouses. You know, so we know what it's like to, you know, fight for the existence of our programs, you know, to make sure that our communities are seen and heard and appreciated at the boathouse. That's something that a lot of programs I know often have to spend a good amount of time fighting for. So how do we use this model to combat racism in the rowing community? Tara, if we can go to the next slide, please. So how can the general rowing community mirror this model? Deep and meaningful change to the culture of programs and at the boathouse. Inclusion is an opportunity, not a burden. A lot like what the ladies in the previous presentation mentioned, you know, we go out of our way to do things and we do it with joy, right? Like we're so excited to make rowing open and meaningful and a wonderful experience for everyone, because the more diverse backgrounds that are in the boathouse, the more there is for us to learn, experience, and celebrate with all these people, right? You know, like I know that a lot in para rowing, we do, you know, can get a lot of flack from boathouse managers or program directors, you know, about the needs that we might need. And, you know, it comes across as a hassle and inconvenience. And, you know, that just needs to change, you know, like never once should it ever feel like a burden to make everyone feel welcome, safe, and included in our spaces. And I think that's really important. Respect the diversity of your broader communities outside of the boathouse. your local communities. Where is your boathouse? And make sure that your boathouses and programs reflect that diversity. There is no reason that regattas shouldn't reflect the diversity of the United States. There's just no reason. And we all need to work to change that. Include everyone's voice in decision making and amplify the voices of those often ignored. Again, back to the last presentation, like, let's not be gatekeepers, let's give everyone a voice. And then kind of hand in hand with that, hire Black, Indigenous, people of color, people with disability, and people from all the communities you claim to support at all levels of your organization. Again, it's not helpful to hire the one Black person and have them doing all of the talking for all Black people. That's just not how it works. There's not one white person at the table. There should not be one Black person at the table. We need to get much more fair and honest in our hiring practices. Just checking. And be relentlessly anti-racist and anti-ableist in language and attitude. Educate, call it out, do not be a bystander. Microaggressions are real. These are things that Black, Indigenous, people of color have to deal with all of the time. And they're not okay. If someone were ever to come into your space and make a comment about a person's wheelchair, we would call them out. We would fix that right away. We would not let that, we would not let that slide. And nothing regarding race should ever be allowed to slide. It is up to all of us to make these changes, to make everyone feel comfortable and welcome and safe. Working at Row New York, I have had the honor and pleasure of working and coaching many Black and brown kids. And I can tell you that I will not speak for them, but they have had some very uncomfortable experiences at regattas. This is a very real issue. It's easy to not think too hard about when you look around and you are so represented by the people. But these are also kids potentially from the youth programs at the boathouses that you all work at, who are saying really unfortunate, inappropriate things, and they get away with it, So this is literally all of us. It is everyone's job to make all of this happen. And then, let's go on to the final slide, please, Tara. So how do we move forward? Educate, 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 educate. Educate yourself, your peers, your staff on racism and privilege, particularly white privilege in the rowing community. Don't be afraid, don't be defensive, don't feel guilty about the concept that you have white privilege, because you do. And the best thing to do with that privilege is to understand what it means, know you have it, and use it for good, to lift up the voices of those who don't have it. Ask for input from your community and work with your community to create opportunities. Collaborate with other organizations also doing things, in the broader boat areas of where your boathouses are. Find ways to get different groups of people into the boathouse, let them experience the beauty of rowing. There's just no reason that it shouldn't be for your entire community. Know where you stand and create a list of actionable items in pursuit of that. Know where you stand on diversity, inclusion, and rowing. Hopefully you'll have an idea of why you would want that and what makes it so wonderful. Again, more people to know, more people to celebrate, more things to learn. There's no downsides to this. But again, actions speak much louder than words. You could put it on paper, but that's relatively meaningless. You need to actually do something with that. Probably everyone here has seen US Rowing's kind of redirect yesterday. And that's a great start, but honestly, this isn't the first time they put something okay on paper. So, we need to wait to see what they do next with that. And then I think the biggest one for a lot of the people here is don't be afraid to make mistakes, right? From the lens of para rowing again, especially if you started to program from the ground up, you most likely, made some slightly questionable or misguided decision at one point or another, with the best of intentions, but mainly probably just missed the mark a little bit. And then what do? You corrected it, right? You saw that you made the mistake, someone brought it up to you, you were open to learning about it and you fixed it. And now you look back and go, whoa, I can't believe I did that. But that's because you were open to learning and then you learned. So the same thing here, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be silent because you're afraid that what you say might be worse. It will not be worse, right? Being silent is the worst thing you can do. And then going with that is learn from those mistakes, be open to critique, being told you're wrong, and then, just admit it and fix it. And then you've learned a lesson and, you know better, and that's how everyone gets better. So that's pretty much everything I've got here. My contact information is here. Always happy to reach out to continue these conversations. If anyone is interested in more research, more resources about this, I also know some great anti-racism educators that I would love to put anyone in touch with who is interested. And yeah, I just hope that this conversation doesn't stop, within the next couple weeks. Like, this is a conversation that we just need to keep having over and over and over. And yeah, that's all I got.
Great. Thank you so much, Angelina. So when we do our wrap-up email this week after, you'll get those slides. You'll get a website devoted to this meetup, or a web page devoted to this meetup, that will not only have Angelina's slides and words of wisdom from Kristen and Aaron, but will also have links that I'm fairly certain have made the rounds, but I want to make sure everybody gets contacted with them. The Philadelphia City Rowing 8 Steps to Inclusion, as well as Row New York's just really, really fantastic information about that. So in the spirit of the 8 steps, what I did was I created a poll. How's everybody doing? Okay. Okay. I created a poll inspired by the 8 steps. Now, you can take the poll or not take the poll, but these are some ideas based on that, based on what they're saying about getting to work in diversity. And these are 8 actionable steps potentially for you. So what we want to do is break out breakout groups again. But what I want you to do is take note, read this poll. I'm going to launch it right now, and take note. You can vote or not. Take note of where you are. What are you currently utilizing? Where are you currently utilizing it? And it can be in the para scheme of things or not. And then we're going to break you out into breakout sessions, and maybe take one of these for you that resonates for you. Whether it's hiring and development, developing a wider pipeline. Maybe your boathouse has scholarship programs for both masters and juniors. And just pick one thing and kind of just talk about that aspect of it. You can come back to the main room anytime you want. Okay, everybody made a few notes, jot down a few notes. Yeah.
Okay. Tara, you can only see 6 of them on the.
If you scroll down, it has a scroll down.
Okay.
You see that? Yeah. Okay. We're also interested if anyone out there is reading any books or what media you're consuming. So be sending that to us if through the chat or follow up later. So I'm going to end the poll and break you out into groups. There you go. You have about 8 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Say that again.
I said I hadn't even thought about that because I've been existing in a not so hopeful space lately.
Yeah, Leah and I were just mentioning how I was surprised that the head of the Charles hasn't made a call yet. Okay, how was that? Thumbs up, sideways? Understandably awkward and interesting, right?
Needed more time.
Sorry, who said that?
Dawn Marie did. We needed more time.
Ah, dang it. I've been reading a lot about how Zoom works the best, and 10 minutes seems like 4 years. But then when you're in it and you have such really great people, it's hard to do. I'm happy to put you back in your rooms if you want. I mean, I got nowhere to be, furloughed. But thank you for saying that, Dawn Marie. There's a lot to unpack here. So does anybody want to report back about maybe something that was interesting, even if it wasn't resolved? Ellen, go ahead.
I was in the group that we kind of need a little bit more time because I was eager to hear about one program that was actually having difficulty bringing in their para program and veteran programs. It sounded like clubs were like, hey, too dangerous, beat it. So I was really trying to solidify a couple of points. One is, this idea of reasonable accommodation, and that clubs are required under the ADA to provide a reasonable accommodation, and reasonable has a certain number of checkpoints associated with it. God willing, the ADA is still legislation right now. I can barely keep up these days, but that if you Google ADA, dear colleague letter, there's a specific instructions on interpretation of the reasonable accommodation requirement that apply to sports. So if the accommodation is reasonable, meaning it's not cost prohibitive, it is doesn't fundamentally change the nature of the sport, and doesn't give an unfair or undue advantage to the athlete with a disability, that reasonable accommodation is an obligation of the club. So we were talking through a little bit of that, and then I had one idea about registered regattas with U.S. Rowing. When talking a lot right now about action items, because everyone's really amped up in the disability space, in the racial justice and social justice space. But I've talked about this for a while, and I don't know what right audience this is, but I do know we've got a few people with U.S. Rowing ties here. Like a U.S. Rowing registered regatta, I would love to see as a requirement, if we, this group or some other group, could come up with a list of, say, 10 items that make the regatta inclusive. I mean, there's obvious ones: the handicapped accessible porta potties, having racks that are right there at the dock area, so having a drop-off area. There's a lot of logistical things that would make it easier. And I'd like to see that if you're going to have a U.S. Rowing registered regatta, I don't know, let's say you've got to pick 3 out of these items to make it, otherwise you wouldn't even get that status. I would love that. I don't know how to do that. I see Judy's on this call. Maybe she might know some good ideas, but we've all been to regattas that are like, oh, so refreshing. We have a place to put our stuff and our racks, and there's a bathroom there. This is great. And then we've all been to the, your wheelchair is in the wet sand trying to beach launch, and it's wicked frustrating. Right. So I would like to see that as an action item, and I'll just kind of stop there.
Yeah, I think I love that Denise, both Denise and Angelina brought up what happens at regattas, because we can be as great and as intentional and as well-meaning and successful in our own spaces. But when you take that out into Head of the Charles, for instance, or another regatta, it's a free-for-all. But if you had things like that, maybe that would mitigate some of those more obvious challenges. I know CZOR has very specific processes when we go to a regatta in terms of how we interact with the local organizing committee and the referees. So there's tools that we use that we'd be happy to share to make sure a regatta experience is as good as it can be. But I will post a link to that ADA Dear Colleague in our follow-up, so you don't have to go do that. And again, after this, you'll get, the people who are registered will get a full attendee list with all the information. That's confidential just for that group. Does anybody else want to share? You can hit the little raise your hand. Anything that came up? Denise, did anything come up in yours, or it was interesting, or?
It was quite a small group. Dwight and I just, it's all good though. We got to talk about a lot of things, and just, I shared just how I struggled with trying to pick which anti-racist thing we're working on in Row, New York. And I mean, given the other current event that's going on, coronavirus, you know, because there are no shortage of current events, given that coronavirus has negatively impacted a lot of the rowing communities, and Row New York is not immune to that. We've had to make some decisions regarding our programs, and as a result, the future of our programs and the future of how we can fulfill our mission, you know, the course is completely changed. It's completely changed. And so with that in respect, it was very difficult for me to pick one thing just because there's so many other fires to put out right now, and not fires that, you know, this is going to go away, but other things on the priority list that take precedent. At least, I mean, I have my priorities, but there's also the organization's priorities. And I think that, you know, in order to move forward together, we have to move together in the same direction. So it was very difficult for me to pick one. And I know, Dwight, you were sharing just a few things about blind spots and a few things about how diversity is defined in different parts of the country, and how attitudes regarding disability and attitudes regarding diversity and just the language surrounding it are different in different parts of the country, given that he's in Atlanta and I'm in New York. There's a lot of different barriers. There's no one size fits all. There are different barriers in different places. So that was, I think that's the gist of what we covered. I don't know. Dwight, give me a thumbs or down if I covered everything.
It was a fantastic job. Thank you. Thank you.
Anita Willingham, I'm curious in terms of, Anita's also affiliated with Blaze Sports, based in Atlanta, Georgia, which is an organization that Seize the Oar is actually partnering with to create the adaptive rowing coach certification, which will launch by the beginning of next year, which is very exciting. Yes, we're going to work on that pipeline. So Anita, I don't know if you have anything to say from Blaze. Blaze is a lot like Pennsylvania Center for Adapted Sports or Outdoors for All, kind of an umbrella. Is that a good way of saying it's an umbrella organization for adapted sports?
Yes, I think it is.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, so I'm an athlete with Blaze Sports.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So you know, in my group, I did hear a lot about, you know, how to get to inclusion, how to better facilitate that within, you know, organizations. And for me, I think that being part of Blaze Sports and being part of Freedom Rows with the VET program, that kind of helped ease into Atlanta Rowing Club. That's where I'm from. But it helped, you know, kind of bring in that inclusion piece because it is a veterans organization, and you're going to have people with different backgrounds, whether that's, you know, disabled, whether that's female, whether that's Black, whether that's Hispanic, you know, just different cultures with that. So I think maybe having an outside organization such as, you know, Blaze Sports or Freedom Rows, helping them to getting with them to help bring in that inclusion piece into your particular organization is a good idea.
Great. No, that's a great piece of advice. I think one of the pieces that Philadelphia said was, and a lot of people have been saying, is partner with related organizations that can give you access to different populations. Yes. And those are organizations like Blaze and like Freedom Rows, who have done a lot of the back work to figure out a good way to work with folks with PTSD, for instance, or I know Ellen actually has a great PowerPoint presentation from 1,000,000 years ago about, at least it feels like 1,000,000 years ago, about how to work with athletes with PTSD. And so these resources are out there, but I love that idea of working with a Blaze or a Pennsylvania Center. So if anybody has one of those in your state, one of those more umbrella organizations that you like to work with, I'd like to also introduce people to Move United. If you haven't met Move United yet, that is a new joined organization of Disabled Sports USA and Adaptive Sports USA. And if you're familiar with Glenn Mary, who was the CEO of US Rowing, he is now the CEO of Move United. So we know there's someone who's interested and or familiar with our sport, who's now in this new and shiny organization. They had a great conference a few weeks ago that had some great materials. So, so thank you, Anita. Thank you, everyone. Anybody else want to have some last thoughts? Yeah, I'll post Ellen's PTSD presentation also. I still have it somewhere.
Great. I don't even know if I know where it is anymore, so she can post
Yeah,
it to me too.
It's
I
deep.
can't take credit for it. I think one of our military staff put it together, who's down in Florida now.
Okay, so we're reaching the end. You guys have been great. It's 10:19. Sorry, it's let's open up the floor. You can unmute yourselves if you want. Any general thoughts, questions? We're going to send you we're going to post a poll evaluation, but we want to know what you want to talk about next time. June 16th. Who is that talking?
I just wanted to mention something.
Betsy.
This is Betsy Mitchell in Sarasota. One group that we've connected to, and being that we're in Florida, we do have a large population of retirees, but we also have regular population of kids and so forth. But we've been able to connect with hospital and physiotherapists, and they've sent to us a couple of their patients who were interested that might not have had the entree to go through Freedom Rows or on their own. And so that's a resource that's been helpful for us as well, if anyone else has something like that locally, if they don't have an umbrella type group.
Yes, that's how Seize the Oar started, was through the hospital system and the rehabilitation system. It's a good way to do it. I know Lisa Russell is here from the PT realm, and a lot of people who come to these meetings are PTs, OTs, physical therapists, occupational therapists, recreational therapists. It's a great way to reach a population. Anything else before we go? We're gonna do a last poll, a kind of how are you feeling poll, but I want to make sure I don't miss anybody who might be raising their hand. Yeah, we really appreciate you guys coming. The next one's going to be June 16th. We'll send out a post email and just get a read on maybe there's some lingering topics. But here's a poll. Okay, give us your thoughts on this.
This is a poll for what?
This is just how you're feeling at this point. We did it the last time we had the meeting.
I was trying to figure out in the context of what scope of, obstacles that are just stopping everybody from rowing to finding, just the molasses we've been thrown into.
Yeah, molasses. That's a good way to describe it. Yeah. All right, I'm going to give you another few seconds here. And David DeWinter, if you could send me a screenshot of the results, that would be great. I'm not acting surprised because I can't see the screenshot, or I can't see the results. Okay, hold on. Would like additional opportunities for coaching para rowing. That's 44, very nice. Confident, building a plan, not ready to implement, good, gaining confidence. Okay, let's talk about the buddy thing, the buddy mentor thing. I have about 6 people, and what I want to do is I want to send those 6 people an email later today. If you want to be on that list, again, go ahead and send me a message or hit me up in the chat and say, I want a buddy, because I want to put those people all in the same room and see what happens, rather than try and match people or whatever, and let you guys be grown-ups and help each other. So if you would like to be a mentor, if you'd like to have a mentor, have a buddy, colleague, go ahead and send me a private message, and we'll get you all put in the same room. We might even do our own Zoom, just us, okay? You guys, high fives for all of you. Not easy conversations, not easy work that we're doing, but CZR Foundation really, really appreciates you coming to the table. And we have a lot to discuss and a lot of really great concepts that I really believe are translatable to the larger rowing community, and we can really showcase some of the great work that we've done over the last million years, if you want to use that time frame of how long we've been doing it. Okay, any last thoughts? June 16th, looking for any hands raised. You just have to say. Okay. We're getting a lot of great comments in the chat room, so thank you so much for sending your nice thoughts, and we're just so happy that everyone's come and joined us. So, and also if you have anybody who you think should speak or be a presenter, or if you want to be a presenter at the next one, please hit us up. We are absolutely game for that. All right, that's it for us. 10:24. Nice job, and we'll see you all later. High fives. Woo, woo.
Good job, Tara. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone. I'm going to stay on for a few minutes if you need to chat. So just let yourselves go.